Megan's pulse raced as she stood between Nathan and the window. Her heart screamed for Jake to leave, but she knew he wouldn't. Nathan took a deliberate step closer, his piercing gaze locking on her. "You've always been stubborn, Megan. But now you're dragging someone else into your mess. That's a dangerous move." Megan didn't flinch. "If you want to threaten someone, Nathan, threaten me. Leave Jake alone." Nathan tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Brave words. But you don't call the shots here." "I do." From the fire escape, Jake had heard enough. Against every warning screaming in his head, he climbed back through the window, landing with a thud inside Megan's living room. "Who the hell are you?" Jake demanded, his fists clenched at his sides. Nathan turned slowly, sizing him up. His smirk deepened. "Ah, the knight in shining armor. You must be Jake." Jake didn't move, his stance unwavering. "You're going to leave. Now." Nathan laughed, a low, menacing sound had sent chills down Megan's spine. "You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. But you don't know what you're walking into." Megan stepped in front of Jake, her voice sharp. "Nathan, enough. You've made your point. Just go." Nathan raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax. I'm just here to talk." "You've done enough talking," Megan shot back. Nathan's eyes darkened, but he finally stepped back toward the door. "You've got until tomorrow night to finish the job, Megan. After that, things will get complicated." He left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Megan sagged against the wall, the tension in the room almost suffocating. Jake turned to her, his expression a mix of confusion and anger. "Who is that guy? What job is he talking about?" Megan shook her head, refusing to meet his eyes. "It's not your problem, Jake." "Not my problem." Jake's voice rose. "That psycho knows my name, Megan. He knows where you live, which means he knows where I live. How is this not my problem?" Megan's throat tightened. She could see the fear and frustration in Jake's face, and she hated herself for dragging him into this. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Jake took a step closer, his voice softening. "Megan, I'm trying to help you. But I can't do that if you keep shutting me out." She hesitated, the weight of her secrets threatening to crush her. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nathan is someone I used to work for. It was a bad time in my life. I thought I could leave it all behind, but he won't let me." Jake frowned. "Work for? Doing what?" Megan hesitated again. "It's complicated. Just know that I'm trying to fix it without anyone else getting hurt." Jake ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "Okay. But if he shows up again, you call me. Promise?" Megan nodded reluctantly. "I promise." Meanwhile, Samantha was pacing in her living room, staring at the photo she had taken of Nathan earlier. She had already reverse-searched his face online and found nothing, which only made her more determined to figure out who he was. Laura, who had come over for moral support and snacks, rolled her eyes as she watched Samantha from the couch. "You're obsessing again," Laura said, biting into a cookie. Samantha ignored her. "That man is trouble, Laura. I can feel it. And Megan? She's hiding something big." Laura sighed. "Maybe she's just private. Not everyone wants to be the star of your neighborhood soap opera." "This isn't just gossip," Samantha shot back. "There's something dangerous going on, and I'm going to find out what it is." Laura groaned. "Fine. Just don't get yourself killed. Or worse, arrested." Samantha smirked. "You worry too much." But as she stared at the photo, a chill ran down her spine. For once, she wasn't entirely sure she was ready to handle what she might uncover. The night was eerily quiet after Nathan left, but the tension in Megan's apartment lingered like a thick fog. Jake sat on the edge of her couch, his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Megan leaned against the wall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "What's in the envelope?" Megan looked up, startled. "What?" "The envelope he gave you," Jake said, gesturing toward the coffee table. "What's in it?" Megan's eyes flicked to the envelope, then back to Jake. "It doesn't matter." Jake stood abruptly, his frustration boiling over. "It does matter, Megan. You keep saying you're trying to fix things, but you're not telling me anything. How am I supposed to help you if you keep shutting me out?" Megan clenched her fists, her voice rising. "I never asked for your help, Jake. I don't want you involved in this." "Well, it's too late for that, isn't it?" Jake snapped. "That guy knows who I am, and he's not just going to forget about me. So stop pretending you can handle this on your own." Megan's breath hitched, and for a moment, her resolve wavered. She looked at Jake, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and guilt. "You don't understand," she said softly. "Then make me understand," Jake said, his tone gentler now. Megan hesitated, then reached for the envelope. She opened it slowly, pulling out a stack of papers. Jake watched as her hands trembled slightly. "It's a delivery list," Megan explained, her voice flat. "Locations, names, instructions. Nathan uses people like me to move things he doesn't want traced back to him." Jake frowned, stepping closer. "Move what?" Megan hesitated. "Documents, sometimes money. Sometimes, other things." Jake's jaw tightened. "And if you don't do it?" Megan's eyes darkened. "Nathan doesn't take no for an answer." Jake shook his head, anger and disbelief warring in his expression. "You can't keep doing this, Megan. There has to be another way." "You think I haven't tried?" Megan shot back. "You don't know what he's capable of, Jake. If I don't do what he wants, people I care about will get hurt. I can't let that happen." Jake's frustration simmered, but he could see the fear in her eyes. He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "Fine. But you're not doing this alone anymore. We'll figure something out." Megan's lips parted in protest, but before she could argue, Jake's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's Samantha," he muttered. Megan's heart sank. "What does she want?" Jake answered the call, putting it on speaker. "Jake! You need to come over. Now." Samantha's voice was urgent, almost panicked. "What's going on?" Jake asked. "It's about Megan," Samantha said. "I've been looking into that guy she met earlier. I think he's dangerous." Megan stiffened, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean, looking into?" Samantha hesitated, realizing Megan was listening. I took a picture of him and tried to find out who he is. But I couldn't find anything. No social media, no records, nothing. It's like he doesn't exist." Jake exchanged a glance with Megan, his expression grim. "We'll be right there." Minutes later, Jake and Megan arrived at Samantha's apartment. Samantha ushered them inside, her laptop open on the coffee table. Laura was there too, leaning against the kitchen counter with her arms crossed. "This better be good," Laura muttered. Samantha ignored her and turned to Megan. "Who is he?" "The guy you met earlier." Megan hesitated, her gaze darting to Jake before answering. "His name is Nathan. That's all you need to know." Samantha crossed her arms. "Well, Nathan doesn't seem like a random nobody. He showed up out of nowhere, and now you're acting all shady. Jake stepped in. She's trying to keep us safe, Samantha. By lying to us. Samantha shot back. Enough, Megan said sharply. She looked at Samantha, her voice firm. I appreciate your concern, but you need to stay out of this. The less you know, the better. Samantha frowned but didn't push further. Instead, she turned her laptop toward Megan. Fine. But you should see this. On the screen was a grainy photo of Nathan entering a building. The building was nondescript, but Megan recognized it immediately. It was one of Nathan's drop points. How did you get this? Megan asked, her voice tense. I have my ways, Samantha said smugly. That building is listed as abandoned, but people have been going in and out all week. Something's definitely going on there. Megan's mind raced. If Samantha had found one of Nathan's locations, it was only a matter of time before someone else did. And if Nathan thought she was responsible. Jake noticed her expression and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We'll handle this, Megan. Together. Megan nodded, but deep down, she knew the storm was far from over. Megan stared at the screen, her mind running in circles. The building on Samantha's laptop wasn't just any drop point, it was Nathan's primary hub. If Samantha had stumbled upon it, it meant Nathan's operation was becoming sloppy. And sloppy wasn't in Nathan's vocabulary. You shouldn't have done this, Megan said, her voice tight. Samantha straightened. I'm trying to help you, Megan. You're not exactly offering answers. Jake cut in, his tone calm but firm. Let's not argue. What's done is done. The question is, what do we do now? Laura, who had been quiet up to this point, finally spoke. I have an idea. How about we don't do anything? Because this is sounding a lot like a bad crime drama, and I'd rather not end up as a subplot victim. Samantha rolled her eyes. No one asked you to come, Laura. Laura shrugged. Well, I'm here now. And I'm telling you, poking around in whatever shady business Megan's ex-boss is into is a terrible idea. It's not that simple, Megan muttered. Samantha frowned. Then explain it to us. What's so important about this place? Megan hesitated. She didn't want to drag them in any deeper, but she also knew that leaving them in the dark could put them in even more danger. That building is where Nathan stores things, she said carefully. Things he doesn't want traced back to him. Like what? Samantha pressed. Megan shot her a sharp look. You don't want to know. Jake stepped in again. If it's important to Nathan, maybe we can use it against him. Find something in there that gives us leverage. Megan shook her head vehemently. No. You don't understand. Nathan doesn't leave loose ends. If we get caught snooping around there, we're done. Then we don't get caught, Jake said simply. Megan stared at him, incredulous. This isn't a game, Jake. I know it's not, he replied, his voice steady. But you're not getting out of this by following his rules. We need to do something. Samantha nodded, her determination matching Jake's. He's right. Sitting around and hoping Nathan leaves you alone isn't going to work. Megan's shoulders slumped. She could see they weren't going to back down. If we're doing this, we have to be careful. One mistake, and we're all in trouble. Laura groaned. Why do I feel like I'm going to regret staying for this conversation? The next day, Megan found herself in Samantha's car, parked a block away from the building. Jake was in the back seat, nervously tapping his foot against the floor. Samantha had insisted on driving, claiming she was the most inconspicuous of the group. This is a bad idea, Megan muttered for the 100th time. We've heard you, Samantha replied, peering through binoculars at the building. And we're still doing it. Jake leaned forward. Do you see anything? Not much, Samantha said. Just a couple of guys hanging around outside. They don't look like security, though. They're security, Megan said flatly. Nathan doesn't use uniforms or anything obvious. But trust me, they're watching. Jake glanced at her. How do we get in? Megan sighed. There's a side entrance around the back. It's usually less guarded, but we'll still need to be fast. Great, Samantha said, putting the binoculars down. Let's go. Wait, Megan said, grabbing her arm. You're staying here. Both of you. What? Samantha and Jake said in unison. This is my mess, Megan said firmly. I'll go in, get what we need, and get out. If something goes wrong, you two are my backup. But you're not coming in. No way, Jake said. I'm not letting you do this alone. She's right, Samantha added. You need us. Megan glared at them both. This isn't up for debate. Stay here. Before either of them could argue, Megan slipped out of the car and disappeared down the street. Megan's heart pounded as she approached the side entrance. She kept to the shadows, her every movement calculated and deliberate. She reached the door and tried the handle. Locked, as expected. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a small toolkit. Her hands shook as she worked on the lock, every click of her tools sounding deafening in the silence. Finally, the lock gave way, and the door creaked open. Megan slipped inside, her senses on high alert. The building was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of dust and mildew. She moved quickly but cautiously, her eyes scanning for anything that could be useful. She found a small office and slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind her. On the desk was a laptop, its screen still glowing faintly. Megan sat down and began sifting through the files. Most of them were encrypted, but one folder caught her attention. Delivery logs. She clicked it open and began scrolling through the entries. Her stomach churned as she realized what Nathan had been transporting: weapons, counterfeit cash, and even evidence from unsolved crimes. Her breath caught when she saw her name listed under several of the deliveries. Suddenly, a noise outside the office made her freeze. Footsteps. Someone was coming. Megan's heart raced as the footsteps grew louder, each one echoing ominously in the narrow hallway outside the office. She quickly closed the laptop and ducked under the desk, her breath shallow. The door creaked open. She peered through a gap under the desk and saw a pair of worn boots step into the room. Boss said to check everything, a gruff voice muttered. The boots shuffled closer to the desk, and Megan held her breath. Her fingers curled tightly around the small multi-tool in her pocket. If she had to, she would use it. The man moved to the desk, his hands rummaging through the drawers. Papers rustled as he muttered under his breath, clearly annoyed. Then his radio crackled. Hey, we've got movement outside. Come check it out. Megan's stomach twisted. Jake and Samantha. The man cursed under his breath. On my way. The boots pivoted, and the door slammed shut behind him. Megan waited a few agonizing seconds before crawling out from under the desk. Her mind raced. She had what she needed: proof of Nathan's illegal activities and the leverage to finally escape his grip. But now, Jake and Samantha might be in danger. Quietly slipping out of the office, Megan moved toward the side door she had entered from. She paused at the corner of the hallway, listening carefully. The guards' voices carried from outside, though she couldn't make out what they were saying. Outside, Jake and Samantha were crouched behind a dumpster, trying to stay out of sight. I told you this was a bad idea, Jake whispered harshly. Samantha glared at him. Well, excuse me for trying to keep an eye on her. She's the one who told us to stay put, remember? Yeah, and you didn't listen. Before Samantha could retort, a flashlight beam swept across the ground near their hiding spot. Both of them froze. Hey! Who's over there? A voice barked. Jake grabbed Samantha's arm. Run! They bolted from their hiding spot, weaving between parked cars as shouts erupted behind them. Samantha tripped, and Jake quickly pulled her up. This way, he hissed, pulling her toward an alley. Megan heard the commotion and sprinted toward the side door. She slipped outside just in time to see Jake and Samantha disappearing around the corner with 2 guards chasing after them. Her heart pounded as she ducked behind a stack of crates. She had to act fast. Spotting a metal pipe lying on the ground, she grabbed it and moved stealthily toward the guards. As the nearest one passed her hiding spot, she swung the pipe hard, catching him in the back of the knee. The man collapsed with a grunt, and Megan wasted no time grabbing his radio and tossing it into the bushes. The second guard turned, his eyes widening in surprise. Megan raised the pipe threateningly. You want to try me next? The guard hesitated, then cursed and ran back toward the building, shouting for reinforcements. Megan didn't wait to see if more would come. She ran after Jake and Samantha, who had stopped to catch their breath in the alley. What are you doing here? Jake demanded. Saving your lives, Megan snapped. Come on, we need to go. Now. The 3 of them took off, weaving through the back streets until they reached Samantha's car. They piled in, panting and shaking. What happened in there? Jake asked as Samantha started the car. Megan pulled the delivery log from her jacket and held it up. I've got everything we need to take Nathan down. But now he knows someone's onto him. Samantha's eyes widened. You mean us? He knows we're onto him. Megan nodded grimly. And he won't let it slide. We need to move fast. Jake clenched his fists. So what's the plan? Megan looked out the window, her jaw set. We use this to turn the tables. But first, we have to disappear. The car sped down the quiet streets, Samantha gripping the wheel tightly. Jake glanced nervously at the rearview mirror, half expecting headlights to appear behind them at any moment. Megan sat in the passenger seat, clutching the stolen delivery log like it was her lifeline. Disappear? Samantha asked, breaking the tense silence. Where exactly are we supposed to go, Megan? Nathan probably has eyes everywhere. Megan stared out the window, her mind working overtime. We can't go home. He'll check our usual spots first. We need somewhere off the grid. Jake frowned. Off the grid? Do you have any idea how hard it is to vanish these days? Cameras are everywhere, not to mention phones. Then we ditch our phones, Megan said. And we don't use credit cards or anything traceable. Samantha, take us out of town. Anywhere rural. Samantha glanced at her. Rural? Megan, I'm not a survivalist. What are we supposed to do in the middle of nowhere? Stay alive, Megan said sharply. Jake sighed. I hate to say it, but she's right. If we don't put distance between us and Nathan, we're sitting ducks. Samantha groaned but didn't argue further. She turned onto a highway ramp, heading toward the outskirts of the city. Hours later, they pulled into a small, run-down motel on the edge of a quiet town. The neon sign flickered erratically, and the parking lot was almost empty. This place looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the 90s, Samantha muttered, wrinkling her nose. That's why it's perfect, Megan said. No one will think to look for us here. They checked in using fake names Megan hastily came up with, paying cash for a single room. Once inside, they drew the curtains tightly and turned off their phones, removing the batteries just to be safe. The room was cramped, with 2 sagging beds and a stained armchair, but it would have to do. Jake dropped onto one of the beds with a groan. Okay, we're off the grid. Now what? Megan placed the delivery log on the small table in the corner. We study this. Figure out who Nathan's working with, where his weak points are. Then we decide our next move. Samantha sat cross-legged on the second bed, frowning. Megan, this guy runs an entire operation. What makes you think we can outsmart him? Because we have something he doesn't, Megan said firmly. What's that? Desperation, Megan replied. He underestimates people like us. He thinks fear will keep us in line. But he doesn't know how far we'll go when we have nothing left to lose. Jake sat up, a spark of determination in his eyes. So what's the plan? Do we go to the cops with this? Megan shook her head. Not yet. Nathan has people everywhere, even in law enforcement. We need undeniable proof, something that forces them to act. And we have to figure out how to deliver it without getting caught. Samantha leaned back against the headboard. So we're just, what? A team of amateur spies now. Call it what you want, Megan said. But if we don't fight back, Nathan wins. And I'm not letting that happen. For the next few hours, they pored over the delivery log. Samantha used her laptop to cross-reference names and locations, while Jake sketched out possible escape routes and safe houses. Megan guided them, sharing everything she knew about Nathan's operation. As dawn broke, they had pieced together a rough map of Nathan's network. This is insane, Samantha muttered, staring at the connections they had uncovered. He's not just running a few shady deals. He's tied to politicians, corporations, even charities. It's like a web. And we're caught in the middle of it, Jake said grimly. Megan nodded. But now we have something to work with. If we can expose the right parts of this network, the whole thing could collapse. Great, Samantha said dryly. All we have to do is bring down a criminal empire. Easy. Jake smirked faintly. I've always wanted to be part of a high-stakes thriller. Megan didn't smile. She knew the stakes all too well. One wrong move, and they'd be crushed before they even had a chance to fight back. Let's get some rest, she said finally. We'll figure out the next step after we've slept. But rest didn't come easily. Megan lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, her mind racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's cold smile, heard his voice promising consequences she couldn't escape. Somewhere deep down, she knew the fight ahead would push all of them to their limits. But giving up wasn't an option. She glanced over at Jake, who was snoring softly on the other bed, and Samantha, curled up with her laptop beside her. They're counting on me, Megan thought. I can't let them down.